I'll start first. Efrem Cutler, thanks for being with us. He's a VP of R&D for Bloomin Brands International. And of course, you know, they've got Outback Steakhouse, Fleming's Prime Steakhouse, Carrabba's Italian Grill, Bonefish Grill, and other concepts as well. So he'll talk about that. Alex Sadowsky is a concept chef at Twin Peaks. We've got Haro, who's the director of Culinary for SPB Hospitality. You may not know that company name because it's fairly new, but they're Logan's Roadhouse, Old Chicago restaurants, Rock Bottom restaurants, brewery, and they have many other concepts there as well. And we got Mark Brandau. He's product development at Datassential, but he seems to be like the guru for ghost and virtual kitchen. So Jack Lee wanted Mark to be on with us today. So thanks to all of you for being with us. So Efrem, let's start with you. Let's talk a little bit about, I know you've got an amazing virtual brand that you guys created with 800 units. Why don't we start with that and just talk maybe from the beginning of how it started, you know, and how just you expanded it to, you know, what it is today, which is amazing.
Sure. So the first thing we actually developed was a fast casual brand called the Aussie Grill by Outback. And we did that for our international franchisees, but because we needed a smaller vessel, less rent, less people, less labor, to offer them, because the big, you know, 5,000 square foot, 6,000 square foot Outbacks in the middle of, you know, Singapore and Tokyo and Shanghai, really expensive. And so based on the economic needs, we offered the Aussie Grill, and we did that internationally. We opened in 2019 in Saudi Arabia, and a week later we opened in Hong Kong. And we did so well that the United States franchise team, as well as our corporate, said, hey, you guys are on to something. And so we opened in a couple malls as test pilots, if you will, here in Tampa. And they did well. And we opened our first brick and mortar last April, right when COVID hit. And that was our first Aussie Grill freestanding building, and did so well. And our chicken tenders were really top selling. We got our bacon bomb, crispy sriracha chicken sandwich, but the tenders themselves really hit. And so as we continue to look at the COVID environment and the DoorDash opportunities, we said, let's start a chicken tender brand. Let's start it with Outback, and because we've got the most restaurants, obviously, with that. And unfortunately, we had just launched a new menu with Outback, so we decided to be less stressful on our teams and ops. We started with Carrabba's. And by doing so, obviously, we had to bring in some mise en place that we didn't currently have in Carrabba's: chicken tenderloins, our breader, a few different SKUs. And so that's how it started. And so we started with Carrabba's, and we started with 10 stores, 15, 25, 100, and then just in January launched nationwide, as well as Outback Steakhouse. So we've got about 800 units doing the Tender Shack right now.
That's awesome. What were some of the learnings too when you went from you know, just doing it at Carrabba's to going to Outback?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like when you build a house and you look at the land and you say, yeah, I'll put some trees here, and you get that little sticker and it says, will grow to 50 feet. You're like, whatever. Then you put them in, and next thing you know, you got these trees covering your house. Same thing with Aussie or Tender Shack. We said, let's start with the Carrabba's mise en place, right? It's easy for the staff. We don't have to bring in as many products as if we were planning on broadening this through all concepts. And so really the learning was, as we're using Carrabba's grill base to grill our vegetables to make our house-made sauce, then we went to Outback and we said, well, obviously we can't make grill base in a Carrabba, or pardon me, in an Outback. It's just unreasonable. So we had to reformulate the formulas and make them more broad so that we would have to cross-utilize as much of the SKUs as possible. And clearly we do have some single SKUs that Carrabba's isn't using as well as Outback, but they're minimal compared to just taking a broad spectrum of using whatever you have. Because if you use the exact same ingredients that one concept does and the exact same ingredients that the other concept does, you're going to have an inconsistent product.
Very interesting. That's really cool. So let's talk a little bit too about, you know, like directions for the future and what you're thinking of there. Because It's, I mean, obviously the incremental business, maybe talk about that first. It's like, what this has meant to the bottom line. But then it's like, what's the company's vision for the future of this? Is this a keeper that we're going to see forever? Or do you see some moderation or some modification of that down the road?
I think we're definitely open to be flexible to see how this truly runs. I mean, it is a test. However, what we really learned with our Fleming's brand was by offering a carryout experience, which we never would have considered with Fleming's. Clearly, you've got table service and the ambiance and wine. And so we were not prepared for carryout, DoorDash, packaging, delivery, et cetera, for Fleming's. And so obviously we reacted, and within 7 days, we were delivering food via third party of our Fleming's food. And what that taught us was it's a different clientele that we're now attracting, because those guests that are ordering on third party are not the old guys like you and me that want to go into the restaurant and have the experience. They want to sit in their pajamas on the couch, have their wine or booze or what have you, and have this amazing steak experience brought to their home. And so that's really one of the epiphanies that we had. And so I say that to say we are now doing Tender Shack in 14 of our Fleming's, in addition to obviously our Fleming's food. But we wanted to launch the Tender Shack to see how that would proliferate in the California market while the restaurants were closed. And so the incrementality, I think, is something that we're going to get accustomed to. And, from an ops perspective, by being spread out in 1,500 restaurants across the globe, in the United States, even if you're doing 3 to 5 orders a restaurant, you're looking at our expectation is 75 million for the year.
That's awesome. That is really amazing. We spoke a little bit too, back to Fleming's, which I really think it's so awesome to hear that. But the wine list at Fleming's has always been something I've been so impressed with over all the years. And I asked you about, wine sales. Talk a little bit about that and what happened during the pandemic.
Yeah, it's really been amazing. And I think it's just human nature when you feel cooped up or denied, right? When you're out or when you have the opportunity, you want to indulge because you want to be happy, right? And so we sold out. I think we did 40,000 bottles of Camus in, I think, 10 days. It was just like this phenomenon. It's like, how are all these people drinking all this high-end wine? And so we did really well with that. And that trend continues. We're doing a bottle and 2 burgers as a combo, if you will, with Fleming's. And we do our wine dinners, virtual wine dinners. And we've got videos that when you take our food, and we can give you tips on how to reheat it, or we'll talk about the origin of the raw material, or we'll talk about the wine virtually via a QR code. So it's really been a great opportunity for us to get more exposure with the Fleming's brand, obviously through this COVID environment.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, and going back to the original, the Aussie Grill, what do you see with that, down the road? Are you looking at more locations? Is it going to be more of a brick and mortar brand? Are you going to, what's your plans for that?
Well, we're going to do a dual path, really. What we learned through the malls when we opened our first brick and mortar was drive-through was crucial, just because of the environment we're in and accessibility. And clearly malls are not exactly a hot spot for hanging out and swapping COVID. So we are going to open 4 more in this country. We're also opening, I think, 24 this year in Brazil. And then in our Long Island market, we're actually testing Aussie Grill virtually. So we're really dual pathing the Tender Shack Aussie Grill restaurants virtually, as well as brick and mortar. And we're going to continue to open, the Aussie Grills brick and mortar, as we really do feel that we have a viable QSR.
I know that you're working on some of the other, brands similar to Aussie Grill, where it's going to be a smaller unit and those kind of things. You ever see, are you going to do something where you have multiple brands in one location branded, kind of like if you see some of the other, food service companies that we know? Do you see you guys doing that?
Yeah, we're actually testing in Chicago a true ghost kitchen. I'm not sure if you're familiar with our express model, but it originated with having half Carrabbas, half Outback delivery. You could also pick up, but we predominantly delivery and third party. However, we're now expanding that as a true ghost kitchen in Chicago, and we'll have the Tender Shack, we'll have Aussie Grill, not full menu, but certainly menu items from those concepts under one roof, and that will be a true ghost kitchen where it's in warehouse and it's delivery only.
Oh, that's cool. And then you've got you're in South Florida, you've got some of those that you were just talking about, right, where the brands are next to each other, but they're branded in the building, right? Are they?
That's correct. Well, in a lot of our locations, we'll have a Carrabba's and an Outback sharing the same parking lot, but the express model itself is under one roof, and it does have both concepts with the addition of Tender Shack as well as Aussie Grill.
That's awesome. Very cool. Well, Alex, let's go to you now, because you guys were on the phone together and there was a lot of commonality when we talked that day about that. So why don't let's first start with, what you're doing now with your Good as Cluck brand. Let's start out with that and what you're doing with it now and where you see it going here in the future. And then I want to get into some questions that'll be commonality between the two of you and Luis as well.
Absolutely. Every time everybody says the name, it makes me giggle still. So good to the marketing team for coming up with that one. So we're doing a very tightened scope, similar to Tender Shack, but we're really focusing on wings because that's a huge part of our business. We've launched it as a test ghost kitchen, as well as we're testing 30, 60, 90-day out virtual kitchen for Good as Cluck. You can't do pickup. We're using everybody under the sun. But just in the few weeks that we've done it, we're already seeing a really great uptick on it, like Efrem talked about. I mean, the overall response has been huge. So we're kind of accelerating what we're doing for this program. We have 2 more in development. We're looking at doing a burger, and we're doing a Philly cheesesteak in addition to these, the Good as Cluck. It'll be branded differently. And that's when we're really going to enter into that warehouse true ghost kitchen area a little bit more heavily, just because when you start running the numbers on those ghost kitchens, it's really hard to even break even selling a single concept. And that's not even taking into account the marketing dollars behind it, building the brand identities, all the time and effort from our whole team in the corporate office, as well as that kind of third party cost, right? We happen to all be kind of in a better spot because we can negotiate a little bit better rates compared to everybody else. Sorry, I just saw a question come by. Does DPS charge you greater percentage because you're not exclusive? Absolutely. It seems to me, talking with everybody in our field, the percentages that everybody's talking about and the contracts are wildly different person to person. It's not like we're all on the same playing field, even though we're all trying to get to the same end goal. So it just really makes me pretty disheartened, actually, for the independent restaurants, right? Even within the third-party delivery people, the fees will go anywhere from 30% down to 10%. And it depends where that kind of order is originating. That's why you see a lot of people moving to do it on their own websites and kind of keep as much data as they have possible and negotiate those rates farther and farther down, because it's your own guest, not somebody that Uber Eats or Postmates is saying, well, if they didn't use our app, they would have never found you. So it's the Wild West. And I feel like at some point they're going to start cracking down, because just in the wing segment alone, Dallas is already really heavy on corporate headquarters and test market for a lot of restaurants. Same with down in Houston, right? Texas in general is a pretty big test market. There's probably 25 competitors now in the wing market. So that saturation and us fighting for pixel space on the third-party apps is going to be the next kind of shootout. We've really attacked that by trying to negotiate better rates on the third party, get really aggressive with pricing, kind of the opposite of what some other people have done. We did go up in price for third party, but yeah, Kevin, it's wild.
Yeah. Do you, this would be a question maybe for all of you, really. It's like, at some point in time, I mean, the third party delivery is not going to go away. This next generation, it's very important to them and it's part of their lifestyle. So at some point in time, there has to be players out there that are going to figure this out, how to make it work for you and for them, the third party company. So, I mean, do you see that it's going to evolve, especially with the volumes that are starting to happen now? Do you really feel like that's, that there's going to be a big change here in the near future?
I don't know. So we're part of the big change. We're running the test markets in multiple cities, and Efrem might be able to speak to this a little bit better, right? We want to see just the change of what's 100% capacity versus 75% capacity versus 50% capacity. And is that third party sale still there, or does it vary, right? If you can go to a restaurant, do you want to pay extra and get it on a third party? I don't personally. I'm kind of like you said, I want to go out and have a good time and take it all in. I don't want to get Uber Eats.
If I could jump in, Alex, I agree with you. I think the guests that are using that forum are using it for a different reason, right? They are all about convenience. And I made the joke about the millennial sitting on his couch in his pajamas eating a $200 steak, but truly that's now a new opportunity and a new opportunity for us to target that different guest via those third parties. We had success with Outback years ago, about 4.5 years ago, by self-distributing. And so we had our own drivers that were, bussers and servers, and they would do that driving piece. However, that obviously comes with some concern with insurance, and obviously it has its own challenges. But it will be interesting to see if there is an Amazon of third-party delivery in our future for restaurants that don't eat all the profits, because mom and pop, we can't afford that.
Yeah, Efrem, I'll tell you. So we live actually in Winter Park, Florida, which is a small town suburb outside of Orlando. And your Outback Steakhouse here, at least 25 years ago, was doing curbside. I mean, you guys were so far in front of this whole curve. It was amazing. I'll never forget when it first started. I'm like, really? People are going to get a steak and a bloomin' onion, and they're going to come and pick it up and not have to get out of your car and do all that. But literally, it had to be 25 years ago. You guys are doing that here, and I'm sure it was in other markets as well. Yeah, that's amazing. So that's got to be a decent percentage. I would think Outback probably had a higher percentage of to go, curbside or takeout than most brands coming into this pandemic. Is that true?
Absolutely. Again, we were ahead of the curve because we had already had those systems in place, including delivery, as well as using third-party delivery. It was less of a percentage back then, where self-distribution and delivery was a greater percentage. The interesting phenomenon, if you will, through COVID is Carrabba's has exceeded the expectations of COVID dining third party. And again, I relate that back to my comment earlier with people want to indulge, they want comfort food, they want to eat food that makes them feel great. And obviously Italian food hits that mark. So thankfully, and we're very, very happy that it's worked out that way, obviously. But it was so interesting to see Carrabba's climb to the top in the arena.
Yeah. Do you think some of that with Carrabba's too is that Italian food travels well?
Absolutely.
Is that part of it? Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that we didn't talk about, which we had been working on, was actually looking at the carry-out experience. And we've changed formulas. And we've changed, high gluten flour to cake flour because it reacts better with crispy longer on fried products. We've changed our spec on fries. We went to the international fry because it's a coated fry. And after 35 minutes in a container, it's still crispy. And so we've made some of those adjustments as far as raw materials, procedures, recipes, formulas to really augment the experience outside of the restaurant.
Well, I know you have to leave us soon, so I'm going to ask one more question for you, and then we'll get to the others here. But so from a packaging standpoint, because you guys are so far ahead of the curve, did you have to work much on packaging, or did you really have it dialed in already?
Packaging is one of those things that you're never satisfied with. But to answer your question, we did have the packaging with Outback, and we shared that throughout all our other brands. Now, obviously, we've learned a great deal of how the performance is based on the different environments and different cuisines. Fleming's, for example, we went to a foil package, very premium, gold and black, and so obviously it comes with an expense. But when you're buying that kind of price for food, you're going to expect a different experience. But I'll answer the question to say yes, we were prepared. However, we are refining it because of the different environments and different expectations that we want to give our guests in this environment. So we're looking for better venting and better thermal and better chill. So it's a constant search because the industry hasn't caught up with the need yet either.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I know you're going to be leaving us in a couple of minutes, but we really appreciate you being here with us for this first half hour. And thanks for your insights and wisdom, around this subject matter. And we'll look forward to seeing where you guys go on these next steps.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, and great seeing all my friends and old school people I haven't seen on here for a while. So appreciate the opportunity.
Very cool. We'll see you soon. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Chef.
Take care. Thank you, Chef.
Luis, why don't you talk to us a little bit here about what you guys are doing and what's going on within your twisted tender concept that you have.
Yeah, so we own different restaurants. So we have Logan's is the big one that we have 113 restaurants as of now. So when we started to talk about the virtual restaurants, we had a concept that we developed recipes, and we were going to start selling wings and tacos. It was something that we started with. And then we changed it last minute to, with new leadership that came in, we changed it to chicken tenders. Then that's when Chef Tim, which you probably know, Tim Griffin, joined us. And he literally took and worked on this concept and the sauces and some of the sauces that we already had in-house. And we rolled out this twisted tenders to all the Logans first. And then we did Old Chicago and migrated to Rock Bottom and so on. And it did well, as chicken tenders. To Alex's point, the chicken wings were a little bit too many of those already out there. And chicken tenders was one of those that, we already knew how to make chicken tenders in-house. So it was a lot easier for us to train that. So it did great. And we rolled that one out in end of November. So we started, like I said, strong. And then, it has been a little steady now. And then we rolled out the other concept, which is called Roadie's Sliders, which is, slider sandwiches. We have 14 different types of sandwiches, sliders in there. And it's, same things that we did in the past with some a little new innovation, new flavors. And that one is taken off. That one is, we are using, powered by Logan's Roadhouse. And that one has been a little bit more successful just because people know and they're familiar with Logan's compared to Twisted Tenders that we just named, part of an SPB Hospitality group, which, people don't know and they don't, search unless you go and start clicking the links and then you get to know who SPB is. But Roadie Sliders is doing great, is something that in the restaurants we are doing, but that is only at Logan's right now. We are looking to go to another restaurant brand, Rock Bottom. So we're working on that, but there's, we will have to bring a lot of SKUs. So we are working on how do we make it easy for those guys to have it.
Let's go on and move on to, Mark, you've got a presentation. Let's go to that now. And then Luis will come back because I want to get Luis and Alex back together so we can talk about some more of this. But Mark,
sure.
Share with us what you've got going.
Sure, I'm happy to. And so thanks for having us on. We've been looking at a lot of these from even before the pandemic, but obviously a lot of these trends have become more salient and there's been a lot more awareness built up. That being said, even though tomorrow is going to be a year of COVID, there's still a lot of room to grow, I think, for awareness, virtual brands and for ghost restaurants. So, for the most part, a little bit less than a third of us are even kind of aware of this trend, or at least know what to call it. Among some of the other, younger cohorts, there's more awareness, but there's still kind of a lot of room to go with all of that. And some of these trends and stats are pretty heartening too. This is a pretty specific COVID era question that we asked, which was we said to people, if a restaurant that you like in your town, if it were closed just because of the pandemic, would you be open to trying them as a virtual ghost kitchen? And that's overwhelmingly popular. We'll see that in the next slide. But even people are open to new brands and new concepts, even if they knew it was being served out of a restaurant that they didn't really know or didn't really prefer. 3 out of 5 people almost saying, yeah, I'll give that concept a try, which is, I think a really encouraging thing to see. And same with, same with the idea of, a limited time restaurant. If there were concepts that were only open, for a short time, only online, just to kind of try new things out. Even if this were people maybe trying out some new menu items for their regular restaurant, there's still a lot of appeal there too. So there are lots of ways to go about this. And I'll just share this slide here. It's a little text heavy, but the gist of it, I think the most important ones are these top 2 options that we're looking at. It just shows that consumers have a lot of appeal for different ways that we can use virtual brands and ghost restaurants. Again, I mentioned this a little bit earlier. 3 out of 4 people are saying, look, if a restaurant that I liked has to close near me, I would certainly follow them to a virtual brand if that's how they had to stay open. We're talking today about a lot of different states are kind of opening back up. The numbers for COVID are plateauing. The news is generally positive. So this is less of a huge concern, but it still is nice to see that this baseline of appeal is there. And 3 out of 5 people just think it's kind of cool anyway. They think it's just sort of interesting that restaurants are starting to do this. And less than half of us, fewer than half of consumers think that this is a fad that's going to go away when the pandemic does. So, but there are different ways that you can do this, right? And the idea of kind of these virtual brands needing to still build a brand, I think that the panelists have said, but before that, there's a lot more brand equity in our brick and mortar locations than there are for some of these virtual concepts right now. But what we've been tracking is that there are kind of these new brand opportunities, franchise opportunities, if you want to go that far, where kind of the brand and the personality come first before the food. We've talked to Datassential before about this Mr. Beast burger, which really stood up, I think, more than 800 restaurants kind of overnight. It's all backed by this YouTube personality, Mr. Beast. He's not one of the ones that my kids follow. They're more into Minecraft YouTubers, but this guy has 87 million subscribers among all of his channels. And if you think about that in context, 87 million subscribers, the last Super Bowl in February had 96 million viewers. So this guy is kind of a media property unto himself, and he's working with Robert Earl and his virtual dining concepts. He's not the only one. Here is the rapper Tyga, who is kind of a Kardashian adjacent celebrity. But they also work with Mariah Carey, who's more my speed. That's how old I am. And then Pauly D's Italian Subs is another one that they work with. That's, of course, Pauly D from Jersey Shore fame. So there are lots of opportunities because there are lots of big personalities that are lending their celebrity to kind of this new dining format. And it's a little bit of a gold rush element going on right now. But what's important, I think, to kind of keep in mind is that they are trying to keep the upfront costs minimal for people that want to do this. Because if you consider, the cost of the product and the packaging, which, I think that Efrem said you're never satisfied with the packaging, but they are trying to take care of this for you. The upfront costs are relatively low. There are some places where you might have to maybe install a fryer or maybe a flat top if you don't already have one. One restaurant concept that's been really great about licensing its product to other, competitors through a licensing model would be Wow Bao. Usually, if you want to buy their product and do it out of your own kitchen as a ghost kitchen, there's some upfront cost of steaming equipment or maybe a flat top for their pot stickers. But, for the most part, these are pretty affordable programs to adopt. And they're being marketed as such pretty aggressively, I think, to folks that already have their kitchen. They're acknowledging that if you don't really have, full capacity with all of the folks that you want to keep employed at your restaurant, you can, work with people like virtual dining concepts, Taiga Bites and others to, add this to your lineup and work through their existing partnerships with Grubhub, DoorDash, and others. And the real big third-party delivery players are also trying to take a white label approach to this. So if you have an existing restaurant concept that you want to launch virtually, they're trying to make this pretty turnkey. And it does kind of remind me a little bit of the big online travel agents, the Expedias and Pricelines of the world. They make this same pitch to independent hotels, saying, look, if you don't have a lot of virtual branding and digital marketing budget or savvy, you need us to help you with distribution. They often take this kind of approach of, well, let us take care of that. We'll make this kind of a turnkey solution for you. So that's coming from the big players and also from startups in the space as well. So Virtuon is one that I think is a relatively new player, coming online to sort of offer this as a service to lots of restaurants, whether they're chains or independents. What that all kind of redounds to is that there are lots of benefits, I think, that make a lot of sense to both an independent restaurateur and somebody who's maybe working at a chain restaurant as well. The startup costs here, they're not zero, but it's certainly a much more affordable than spinning up a big restaurant brand in a brick and mortar sense. These are, I think, opportunities for incremental revenue, especially when you consider that if you aren't already selling some of these menu items, then they don't just open up new opportunities for menu categories, but they can open up new day parts for you as well. Improve labor, you already have these folks in your restaurant that don't have as much to do when the dining rooms are closed. We heard people say that you can take folks who are on your dishwashing crew, they can start fulfilling orders, they could start helping deliver orders. So all of that does kind of it takes some of your prime cost and does kind of take some risk out of that model. And because we're talking about some either new items that people love, like chicken wings and tenders, or working with celebrities that are trying to get in on this game, there is a lot of brand excitement possible. So this does kind of take us to one discussion, though, that it's going to be an important thing, which is it's around transparency. So you can take a look at a virtual brand like the United Pepperonis of Pizza. Probably none of us have ever really heard of this before. Didn't really exist before the pandemic, and here's a look at kind of why. So this virtual concept, these are a couple locations that we found operating out of Nashville, which is where Jack, our founder, is from. So we've got, they're located 22nd Avenue in Nashville and Lebanon Pike. But if you look at these addresses and do just a little bit of digging, you'll see that they match the addresses for some completely different brick and mortar locations. So we've got Michelangelo's Pizza here in Nashville, Sicilian Pizza. They are rebranding online under this umbrella of the United Pepperonis of Pizza. And there's nothing wrong with that, but we just wanted to caution that consumers do, sort of notice these things, and they have, a demand out there for transparency. So it's always something to keep in mind. In our surveys that we've conducted recently this past fall for virtual brands and ghost kitchens, 2/3 of people are saying, look, we just want you to be, transparent and upfront with, where this food is coming from. People are open to supporting a virtual brand or a new menu line, even if they are, not necessarily aware of or fond of the restaurant where it's coming from. But here, I think just honesty is truly the best policy, because otherwise, even 1 in 5 of us are still saying, even if you aren't going to tell us where this is being produced, at least let us know that this is a virtual brand and not a brick and mortar location. And fewer people are just saying, I don't really require any labeling. So that's a need for transparency. There's one more thing that I would add too, which is, so here's the marketing challenge with running a virtual brand or a ghost kitchen. And that is, consumers are much more likely to have the brand in mind when they are looking for a place to get a delivered meal. So when we ask folks, what came first the last time that you had something delivered to your house, did you have a restaurant in mind, or did you just open up an app or do a search engine search and browse for whatever was around? 2 out of 3 people are much more likely to have the restaurant in mind already, and then they will go either call or order online with the restaurant directly, or they'll try and find it on one of those third-party apps. So a couple of lessons here. The first thing is you really need to invest in your direct channels for this kind of online ordering. I draw a lot of parallels with this stuff to the online travel agencies like Expedia and the hotel industry. The hotels would tell you they would much rather get that direct booking than have to go through Expedia and pay that marketing fee on top of commissions and everything else. I think the same thing is happening now in the food service industry. So you need to build a brand and be top of mind and have an ordering experience that people are satisfied with, so that they just come to you directly rather than open up DoorDash first, then find you, or even just do a search of restaurants near me. And then the other thing too is that, we'll get to this in a second as well, but you need to be able to execute your signature dishes for delivery as well as you can, because I think that if folks are looking for something that they know specifically that they want, like a bloomin' onion, and they want that specifically, then they're likely to look for it at one of Outback's direct channels rather than try to find it through these third-party delivery guys. We're talking about menu development with all of this, and I think that right now virtual menus tend to be pretty straightforward. We're doing a lot of wings, a lot of chicken tenders, and sliders. These are formats that are very, very familiar. But if we want these opportunities to last beyond the pandemic, then we need to be as innovative as ever, kind of coming out of this. And so one quick shameless plug for Datassential, only because we've taken a look at it through this platform. This is our scores platform, which I think that a lot of the membership has seen before in action, where we can rate every new LTO or new menu introduction on a lot of different metrics like purchase intent, uniqueness, things like that. But more recently, we took a look at appeal of certain things by service format, by delivery format. So we asked consumers, what is most appealing to you if it is delivered versus something that you eat in a restaurant dining room or get to go. And a couple of patterns really have kind of emerged where they make sense. So some things are really the most appealing in a to-go format. Things like the breakfast sandwich or breakfast pastries, donuts and things like that. That's already something that we, as consumers, really do think of in a to-go format, especially with the drive-through. If you think about that morning day part, and the same with non-alcoholic beverages, coffee would be a big one. But some things just don't travel well. So things like seafood, alcohol, and we could probably debate here a little bit if Efrem were still here about the success with Carrabba's pasta dishes are seen much more as an in-person dining in comfort food. And then finally, this shouldn't surprise anybody that pizza is going to be most appealing as a delivered format, which makes sense. But you could see there's a really kind of big divergence of how folks perceive different food categories to be made for delivery or not. So there's a lot of work to be done, I think, to not just execute things in an off-premise manner, but also to excite people in an off-premise manner. We have to kind of re-educate people to think of a lot of our signature dishes as working really great off-premise. That last point kind of brings us all to we need to focus on making delivery better. We think that as the pandemic ends, folks are still going to hang on to this habit after the pandemic more than you might think. I mean, whenever we introduce something really convenient, it's hard to take that away. The demand is going to be out there for it. Obviously you can throttle it down a little bit the more that we welcome our guests back into the dining room, because I think that guests are looking forward to getting back to dining in as much as we are to hosting them. But this option will be something that it's still in our quiver as consumers and as corporate chefs, I think. So we'll need to be executing as well as ever and innovating as much as ever coming out of the pandemic. So that's just something to really keep in mind.
How much did chicken sales grow during this pandemic? Because it seems like, especially from a virtual standpoint, it's like chicken was king. So in all your statistics you see, I mean, was the growth of chicken in general over the past year pretty, astounding?
Yeah, this is for a different thing, but we are doing our Firefly 500 report right now. That's our top chain restaurant rankings by sales and by unit growth. And yeah, the limited service chicken segment just absolutely killed everybody this year. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's not just the success of Wingstop, Popeyes, Chick-fil-A. Really, the whole segment had really broad sales and unit growth. They did really well. What I think that says is just that has a lot to do with the appeal of chicken. Anyway, even before the pandemic, even before the fact that we needed stuff that traveled well. So this is one place where I think the pandemic and the pivot toward this off-premise model really leveraged a strength that was already there. The appeal of fried chicken on the bone, chicken wings. But I think that what that has done, I think, has built up. I think it's built up the market for delivered food, digitally branded off-premise strategies and I think that'll benefit lots of different menu categories. I think it would be great for sliders. I think it'll be great for lots of other things.
Yep, I agree. And then here's another question too. This is for everybody. So, chime in, Alex and Luis as well. But they wanted their point of view on to push innovation for virtual menus. The optimizing search algorithms, will they really work? Because now people are searching for, it seems like things that that they're going with the mindset of what they're trying to order in, right? If we're looking for Italian food or looking for seafood or chicken or whatever that might be. It's like, so if somebody gets really innovative, are you really going to pop to the top? Or is it going to be something that's just going to be a great idea that doesn't get used?
Maybe not right away, but that's where the marketing cost kind of comes in to be at the top of the sort order, and it's worth it. Ask any hotel, trying to make it today, or any airline, trying to make it today, trying to sell travel and accommodations. There's really no getting around the distribution costs as a big part of your marketing model.
Yeah, Alex, you were going to say something on that?
Yeah, if you market it correctly, you are going to do really well. So we're looking at one of the ghost kitchens, using it as our test kitchen. And we're actually going to market it as if you've been to Houston's R&D kitchen, it's going to be something similar to that. So it'll be nothing but our innovation drivers, right? There will be none of the other stuff you can get anywhere else. And we're really going to use it as, at that point, it's free surveys, which all of us spend a lot of money on R&D and surveying systems, and we're going to run it in parallel with Datassentials and scores, right? And we're just going to start picking off all of the cool, innovative stuff we can, and whatever rises to the top, we'll roll it into all the rest of the concepts. So, I mean, if we get creative collectively, it'll end up rising for everyone, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I love that idea, and it's self-serving, but I do think you're right.
So, Luis, I'm sorry that you got cut out earlier, and we had some technical difficulties there. But you were actually talking. I don't know that you finished your thought on that, but you've got this slider concept, Roadie Slider, which I love the name, by the way. That's really cool. Can talk to us a little bit more about that, because I know that you went over all the different offerings you have, and I thought it was really cool because it's a very broad selection. But can you talk about what else you serve with that as well, and then what happened with the success of that can relate back to Logan?
Yeah, so what we're doing is, like I said, is using what we have in-house. The most, I see one of the questions was the most popular roadie is the fried chicken roadie is the most popular. And again, we're using something from Twisted Tenders because some of the Logans, we have almost 3 concepts running out of those kitchens. So we're just trying to cross-utilize all ingredients as possible. Like I said, the ones that are selling really well is the fried chicken, as we all know. The crab cake is another one that's doing really well. That's really surprises. And then we have some odd ones out there, like grilled salmon that you will not see it as a sandwich. And, it's doing what we thought it was going to do. It's not selling as much, but it's moving. Brisket, we brought brisket for that. And we have a brisket roadie. And it's doing okay. But, you got... Just like on Twisted Tenders, we have the sauces, even though we got really creative with the sauces, the ones that they sell the most is, honey mustard, twisted ranch, something to do with ranch. And then other ones are not very popular, even though they're really good, just people are not willing to try it. They go to what they know. So, it's a little bit of, you try to push the envelope on some of the sauces, but the consumer at the end of the day, I think when they're set, to have chicken tenders, they go with what they like. And as I was saying, we're selling all Chicago pizzas out of Logan's too, just so we can, utilize the people that we have in the restaurants, with a low investment. Like I said, we have 3 to 4 ghost kitchens virtual kitchens coming out of Logan's. And we're working 2 more.
So to do the pizza concept there, how much did you have to change equipment-wise or and adding staff? Did you have to add any additional staff?
We didn't have to add anything because we moved the pizza station closer to where there's a body already there. So, some of these kitchens, we put it right behind the salad station. So that way the person making salads is actually, when a pizza comes in, they just turn around and make a pizza, throw it in the oven. We just cross-train a lot of the cooks. So that way, if the salad person's not doing it, is the cook, the grill cook doing it, or the manager at that point. And we're selling, you're not selling 100 pizzas a day. You're selling, 10 pizzas a day. So it adds a little bit. And like I said, we have not thrown a lot of marketing into it just because we wanted to start slow. Because it's a totally new thing that we're training to do to somebody, to make pizzas.
Awesome. Hey, we had another question too that would be good for all of you, really. But Alex, you addressed this the other day when we had our call. They were asking about the different, third-party deliveries. Postmates was the question that came up. And I know you had your opinion on DoorDash, Uber Eats, and Postmates. Can you go through that with them?
Yeah, so it really affects us all differently because it depends where your density is across the country, right? The 800-pound gorilla is DoorDash. They're the biggest in almost every market across the country. Postmates does have quite a good foothold in the Midwest, and in some places, they're the only delivery service. Uber Eats is trying to pick away as much as they can at DoorDash, and they seem like they have a larger delivery service area, which they don't like to share with you. That's proprietary. So you kind of end up having to use everyone. And Mark can kind of talk to this too, because I know Datassentials had a whole bunch of information on it, right? But it seems like at least for the millennials and Gen Z, they have a particular app that they use. They will not switch app to app.
Yeah, and you're right though, and that does depend on kind of where they are and what is the dominant player, kind of in their area. So it varies by market to market, but it is pretty sticky, whichever one is kind of the winner.
And I wouldn't be surprised if DoorDash continues to try and buy the rest of them. So they're using that higher percentage that they're charging all the restaurants and those juiced sales from COVID, in my opinion, and they're going to go and pick up every little player they can possibly. I wouldn't be surprised if Postmates is on their radar. Uber's probably too big for them to try and take, but we'll see.
I mean, I think you're right. And I think, what it comes down to is that Uber and DoorDash are both going to be super rich in data as well, in customer data. And you got to believe that they are going to be able to use that for, to basically make even more money and make even more improvements we might end up with that kind of a duopoly like we do with the online travel agents.
Well, if you think about it too, once you pay the membership of $9.99 or whatever it is, the yearly membership as a consumer, you're going to try to get your money's worth. So that's why you're going to use DoorDash,
Yep.
What's interesting too is having two major ones, is actually, you want competition, right? So where you guys sit, it would be really bad if DoorDash ended up buying out the entire industry and you had one person to deal with it, right?
They're really smart, right? So not only do they have all the data, most of the companies are using something called Olo to do integration with their point of sales in the kitchens and the restaurants to make it as seamless as possible. DoorDash and Uber are developing their own. So they want to cut out any possible middleman for the entire process and be vertically integrated. I wouldn't be surprised if they go after one of the technology companies for restaurants as well, right? I mean, it might not be that far away that somebody like DoorDash could try and purchase somebody like Toast, right? They would have the entire process. Anything that involves a guest is going to involve them.
Wow,
Olo just went public or is going public too. So it's going to be a pretty wild space to watch, I think.
Yep.
Who'd you say was going public, Mark?
Olo?
Yeah, that's what I heard too. I read that recently. Yeah, we did an event with them a couple of years ago. But anyway, this has been great. It's after 5 o'clock, so I kind of hate to do this, but there's one other comment, Alex, you have to bring up because I couldn't stop laughing. So Efrem talked earlier about like alcohol sales, and you brought up about wine sales, but you also mentioned a certain liquor.
Yeah.
Can you talk to us about that?
One of our really good sponsors too, right? They like to take care of us. So we are seeing pretty good beer sales, pretty good wine sales. The alcohol to go, it's okay. But in particular, what I say to even all of our vendors, right? The type of people that are going to come in and they're our guest at our restaurants, they're not going to pay $8 for Fireball because they're drinking out of a full-size bottle in their truck, right? That's a hard sell for $8 or maybe they already have been drinking by the time they get to your restaurant. But
I love that. That's a great close here. So with that, I just want to say thanks to all of you. I really appreciate the information, Mark, Alex, Luis, Efrem as well. But I want to also, we have a video that Mike is going to show in a minute, but I want to thank all of our sponsors and members that are here in the audience today.